Anonymous requested Mac x Cheerilee. Simple. Now listen here, boy. Big Macintosh was a simple pony. He woke up, he ate, he worked, and then he slept. Then the next day he would wake up, eat, work, and sleep. All without missing a beat. A true well-oiled machine, that man. However, like all machines, he was rather, well, simple. No surprises there, no glitz, no glam, or special flair for him to bother with. None of that fancy schmancy magic or wings. Still, he never did need those things to be good at his job. No. Bold, red, and cornbread fed, he was the true Earth colt. He just happened to be awfully, terribly, horribly simple. As a simple pony, though, as one might assume, he had simple pony needs. Now, most of these needs were rather mundane and pointless to mention, such as eating, drinking, and sleeping. But now others, well, those are a different story completely. Now, understand that ponies have instincts. Some of those instincts are fine and dandy, but some of the others are a bit more primal. The reliable fella, he was, Big Mac could always take care of most needs himself, but there was some exceptions. Namely one which just happened to decide to, plague his mind today. Sex. He would take anything. A mare, a filly, hell, maybe even a griffin. At least for today, he really just couldn't bring himself to actually care about small details like that. Anything that had 4 legs and walked around looked doable in his eyes right now. Once he'd find a mare that he'd normally see as attractive, oh, God help him, because it would take all of his will to not go over and mount her right there. There was still one teeny-tiny problem, though. He had no idea about sex. Being so sheltered most of his life, he never really had the time or place for girls. The only reason he actually even knew that sex existed was because Brayburn had once brought a cheap porn magazine over when they were foals. So now he was stuck with his fanatical urge to do every mare in town, with no real way to solve it without making himself look like an idiot. However, as our faithful protagonist will find out today, some things could only be solved with a bit of, woman's touch.
You know what I'm saying? Like you get a little woman on the side, a little bit of touchy-feely going on.
Big Macintosh nervously shuffled around Ponyville, a nervous sweat accenting his brow. Why him? Out of every single apple-picking pony that forsaken farm, why was he chosen to go into town today? Heck, he couldn't even remember why he was here or what he was supposed to be getting. In fact, the only actual coherent thoughts he could garble out of his spinning head were all about how good that little red-violet mare across the street looked. Now, when he said good, know that he actually meant that she looked damn near perfect. The way that her light purple and pink mane framed her face, the way her sage-colored eyes shone through, boy, it made something in Big Mac warm and fuzzy. The feeling grew inside him the more he looked at her, almost to the point where he didn't want to look away. It was like she was some sort of magnet. He couldn't even pry his eyes away from her for a second. She just seemed to invoke a warm feeling in his heart. Actually, now that he thought about it, it seemed like that warm feeling was a little bit lower. Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Oh, no, no, not in public. He was not going to do this in public. As stealthily as a pony as big as him could, Big Mac carefully ducked down into the nearest alleyway. You see, the ponies, they don't have any clothes, so, if you got a huge erection in the middle of public, some people might be interested. He quickly but calmly tread away from the street, farther and farther back into the dark recesses of the space between the buildings, taking every turn he saw and not caring a single bit about where he was going or how he was getting there. Once he felt he gained enough distance from others' eyes, he finally stopped for a moment and leaned back against the wall, the privacy still doing nothing to lessen his own shame. Today, it seemed everything was coming up tails for him. Turns out that warm feeling wasn't some emotional soulmate type feel. Oh, no. Instead, it was him, getting an erection, a rather large one at that, from staring at that oh-so-fine firecracker back there. He sighed, ashamed of himself for not keeping a hold of his thoughts. If he was ever going to get through the day, he was really going to need to get back control of himself. Looking back up, Big Mac decided that he needed to head home. Now, before he woke up, let me retry that one. Looking back up, Big Mac decided that Looking back, and then the word says up. Big Mac decided that he needed to head home now before he woke up before he woke up next to some mare that he didn't even know. He figured that he could just go back and say that the store was out of, well, whatever he was supposed to get. Except there was one problem. Since he had only been thinking about getting away from the damn street, he was now way off course, and had absolutely no idea whatsoever of where he was, much less where home was. All he could see was just back alleys and roads headed in every direction. He might as well have been a mouse in a maze. Oh, well, Big Mac thought as he began to sit up. Sitting here whining about it ain't gonna fix anything. He checked the area around him for stray ponies, not wanting anyone to see his problem, before finally setting out into nowhere. A new feeling of spirit and vigor filling him. He hummed a tune as he walked, turned the corner, and smack! Slammed right into some poor pony. A loud whoof was the only warning Big Mac got before both of them tumbled to the ground. They both painfully pounded onto the pavement. Mac's head crashed on the ground, hard from momentum, sending a jolt of pain throughout his body as the world around him spun. He rolled over onto his stomach with a groan of agony, his head beginning to swim as his vision blurred. He could hear someone saying something, but he really couldn't make it out, as if he was hearing whispers from far away. Eventually, his sight started coming back into focus. Big Mac remembered where he was and what just happened. Well, shit, he cursed in his head. Bumping into some pony like that with a boner probably wasn't the best idea. Grunting again once more out of reluctance than in pain this time, he shakily lifted himself off the ground, still unstable from pounding his head. A lime green saddlebag had apparently ended up near him in the fall, presumably the other ponies. Once Big Mac's head cleared up a tiny bit, he picked up the bag off the ground, taking the leather strap in his mouth. It was the best he could do. After all, he kind of was the one who had made it fall. Here, I got you, Big Mac said, hefting the surprisingly heavy bag up and turning around to face his accidental victim, doing his very darndest to cover his still semi-hard stallion hood by awkwardly crossing his legs. Sorry about that. Mac stopped in his tracks. Noticing the familiar poofy mane before anything else. Well, today just keeps getting better and better, he grudgingly realized. Somehow, even though his thoughts started to flood with sarcasm, evidently, he wasn't the only one who felt like going through the alleys. Proof of this was right in front of him. That perky, precious little filly he was eyeing across the street earlier, maybe? No. She was probably somewhere far, far away by now, but Cheerilee wasn't. No, she was actually right in front of Big Mac, wide eyes and all. Oh man, I gotta take a break here. Alright, well, I'm back, and sorry about that. I kind of forgot what Cheerilee sounded like, because, I haven't seen the show in a while, so I had to give myself a little refresher on that one. So forgive me if my Cheerilee voice isn't very, accurate. Well, hello there, Big Macintosh. Why, I haven't seen you ever since we were both just kids in school. Cheerilee's twinkling laugh rang in Big Mac's ears, making something inside him melt. She thankfully took her saddlebag from him, her mouth getting a little too close for Big Mac's taste. But it was probably just fine for her. In one fluid movement, she gracefully slung it back onto her haunches. She turned her attention back towards the stallion in front of her. Hey. Big Mac flashed an awkward smile towards her, zoning out for a moment before suddenly coming back down to earth. Sorry about running into you like that. He nervously scratched the back of his head, struggling to scrap around for words. Oh, it's fine. I was actually wondering if you were okay. You seem like you hit your head pretty hard. Cheerilee came in close to Big Mac, inspecting the side of his head intently. Are you sure you're fine? Yeah. Probably just a scrape or something. Okay. Her circling around him really wasn't helping him stay in control of himself. She stopped back in front of him, seemingly satisfied. If you say so. Hey, do you want to help walk me home? It'd be great to catch up with you. I promise it won't take long. The pleading eyes and smiles she fabricated nearly made Big Mac's heart drop. Of course, instead of stopping, it kept on fluttering nervously. Sure thing. Even though getting hit on the head probably wasn't helping, Big Mac was rapidly getting intoxicated by her beauty. Her smell, her sound. Everything about her was starting to draw him in, like the pony back on the street. It made him wonder what she tasted like. Cheerilee leaped off the ground with an excited squeal, forgetting that she was in public. She tilted her head down slightly as an embarrassed blush crept up her already dark cheeks. Sorry, sometimes I get a little carried away. Oh, that's fine. Truth is, Big Mac actually liked that kind of sound. He pondered how much she really did scream, letting his mind get a little carried away with itself. Just fine, he added quietly. Cheerilee seemed to take a huge relief. Take a huge relief? Take a huge relief in his approval, because right then she hopped up again, squealed just as loudly. She landed with gusto, raring to get going. Well, let's go then, huh? She turned around and started marching in some unknown direction, apparently knowing her way around this place. Big Mac followed her somewhat reluctantly, but also somewhat admiringly. He knew this wouldn't... No, it couldn't end well, but all he knew was that he anticipated where this was going, whether it be some awkward rejection of disgust or some happy ending. He didn't really care. The rhythmic swaying of the girl's luscious hips in front of him was mesmerizing. It was like he couldn't look away. It made him nuts. However, the worst part of all this was that Cheerilee had no idea what he was thinking. She was just charging ahead bubbly, humming a sing-song tune as they walked. God, some of the scenarios in Big Mac's head, even he couldn't believe that he was thinking these things. About his friend, too. Big Mac could feel his erection starting to come back again, the mirror in front of him just fanning the flames. This was a bad idea. He knew it. He could have just ran away or waited in the alley. She should have just said no to her. Something is bound to go wrong. He just knew it, and in all honesty, he didn't know if he could control himself when that happened. So, Big Mac, what brings you to this side of Ponyville? Cheerilee's sudden question snapped Big Mac out of his thoughts. She looked back at him with a bright grin. Oh, I was, Big Mac tried to fabricate some white lie of way some kind of white lie of why he was actually in Ponyville. But doing that is kind of hard when you don't even know why yourself. Well, I pretty much darn forgot myself, he chuckled timidly, hoping she'd understand. You forgot why you were here in the first place? She raised an eyebrow skeptically at him and cocked her head. You sure you didn't hit yourself too hard? Big Mac shrugged and looked back at her. Yeah, I just got a little distracted. He trailed off, subtly raking his eyes over the generous curve of Cheerilee's flank. You know, I can really sympathize with Big Mac here, because when there's a lady with a nice ass, well, I find myself distracted for some moments as well. Now, where was I? Yeah, well, pretty much darn forgot. Sure didn't hit your head too hard. Just got a little distracted. It was like he was in some kind of trance. Every movement from her body captivating him. It was pure torture to him. Distracted, huh? That's what they're calling concussions these days? She jokingly teased him, her warm smile only enhancing her already pleasant demeanor. Oh man, was she pretty. Big Mac's observation was stopped. However, when she spoke again... Well, I usually use this place as a nice little shortcut from work to my house, but anyhow, what have you been up to? Still on that big old farm of yours? Yeah, haven't ever been able to get out of there. Never will. Not that I'd ever want to. Big Mac could see them coming up the street. What about you? What are you doing now? He was actually genuinely curious about what his old friend had been calling work now, despite also wanting her to just keep on talking with that voice of hers. Well, now I have a job as a teacher at the local school around here. The way she said teacher clearly showed just how much she actually liked her profession. Maybe I should say teacher with a different inflection. Well, now I have a job as a teacher at the local school around here. The way she said teacher clearly showed just how much she actually liked her profession. It was like she was talking about a good memory, or a book she really enjoyed. Really? Big Mac was astounded that the loud, fun, and party-loving filly he knew back in school had actually decided to pursue such an opposite-quality workplace. He would have figured she would have ended up somewhere like Scratch, making music or partying all night. Things really have changed, he guessed. Yeah, I just love everything about it. The books, the kids, the lessons. It's perfect. And there's even the... Just talking about what she did got her bouncing on her hooves and gesticulating rapidly. Gesticulating. Let me look that one up. Let's go gesticulating. Why do men think about women who gesticulate a lot when they talk? Use gestures. Dramatic one. Hey, that sounds a lot like myself. Alright, anyways. To gesticulate means to use gestures. There's your vocabulary word of the day. Yeah, she loves everything about it. Even though she was wildly enthusiastic, Cheerilee did tend to prattle on a bit, so Big Mac figured she wouldn't mind if he dropped out on listening. However, she looked back at him suddenly, her giddy giggles gradually coming back. Still single, though. She winked at him pertly. That's where Big Mac's brain did a complete 180. Now he was all ears. Both of them perked up and immediately interested in what she was talking about. He found himself leaning forward to hear her better as they walked onto the cobblestone-paved street. Yep, that's what I thought, Cheerilee said as she chuckled heartily, loving the reaction she got out of him. After calming back down, she started talking about herself again, this time with Big Mac actually listening with intent. That seems to happen to really any cold I tell that to. Perked ears, wide eyes. It's pretty funny, actually. I'm not even that pretty, to be honest. That phrase actually provoked something inside Big Mac. Here we go. He's going to flow? Hang on. I was going to say something, but then I lost it and said flow instead. I got nothing. He's going to charm her with his, charms. Have you looked in a mirror any time, little lady? I'm surprised that every guy in town doesn't want to get with you. It almost drove him to anger, a beautiful mare like Cheerilee putting herself down. Her cheeks instantly darkened as soon as he said that. She unsuccessfully tried to hide it by lowering her head and flipping her hair. Thanks, Mac. That means a lot to me. She got oddly quiet for a while, which, for her at least, was incredibly strange, before coming to a stop before a petite single-story house on the corner. Well, here we are. She kicked at the ground idly. The whole air of exchange was awkward. Any pony could see that. With neither one of them saying anything, Big Mac was pretty sure he could hear a pin drop. He cleared his throat thoroughly before speaking again. So I guess I should get going. You wanna come inside? The abrupt question popped out of Cheerilee's mouth before Big Mac could even finish a sentence. She looked at him hopeful, some of that constant happiness back on her face. No, say no, say no, say no, Big Mac drilled into his head, but he could still feel that other part of him yearning to go inside. Come on, we've rehearsed this, just say no and get it over with. It felt like it was taking him an eternity to answer a simple question. Just say, sure. Shit. Well, now he was positive that he was screwed. Get it? Screwed. Yeah, maybe it would have been fine with any other mare. He could just awkwardly pretend he knew what he was doing. The worst that could have happened was he embarrassed himself in front of a total stranger, but no. Today he just had to run into some pony he did know. What happens now, he guessed, was all up in the air. Cheerilee smiled at him pleasantly. Well, come on in then. She opened up the door and went in, leaving it purposely ajar from him. With a sigh, she solemnly walked into the house. Welcome to my humble abode. It was a comfy home, perfect for any run-of-the-mill pony. While it was tiny, what it lacked in space, it made up for comfort. In the center, there was a single sofa, 2 recliners flanking its sides with a coffee table in the middle of it all. On the far side of the room, an open kitchen lay, laying with normal checkerboard tile and a dining table. There was one thing, though. Where do you sleep in here? As Big Mac sat down on the cozy couch, he noticed that there was not a single bed in sight. Oh, the couch is actually a fold-out bed. It's not that much, but it does its job. Cheerilee was in the kitchen, putting her saddlebag down on the table before turning around to face him. You want a drink? Sure. Some water'd be nice right now. He really needed something to calm his nerves, even though he was pretty sure all the water in the world couldn't make him feel any less nervous. After a while, Cheerilee came back with 2 glasses of water for each of them. A smirk plastered on her face for some reason. Here you go. She spiked it. I bet you she did. She said as she handed him his glass, before sitting on the couch next to him. Thanks. Big Mac greedily brought the water to his mouth and tipped it, needing everything he could get right now. Now, Cheerilee started as she sat down her water instead of drinking it, a wicked tone creeping into her voice that made Big Mac uneasy. I'm just curious, but is it healthy to have a boner as long as you have? Big Mac choked on his water, his body jerkily freezing up in reaction, placing his glass down hard on the coffee table. He coughed to clear up his breathing, but actually more out of shock to Cheerilee's blunt observation. He glared at her incredulously. "You knew?" She snorted adorably. "Well, don't get this into your head, but you're not exactly the smallest fish in the sea, if you know what I mean." She suggestively winked at him for the second time today, making his heart skip a beat. "Not exactly easy to keep that guy locked up, She beamed an inviting grin at him, doing no part in easing his already frayed nerves. "Yeah, today's just been all sorts of crazy for me." He sighed and closed, defeated by her ruthless advance on him. "I just feel like my head's about ready to explode. Every single mare I see drives me nuts. It's something else, all right." He opened his eyes back up to a curious Cheerilee glancing back into his. She looked deep in thought. "What? So, it's like heat?" Big Mac blankly stared at her, confused. Heat?" Cheerilee chuckled lightly before turning back to face him. "Oh boy, you really should have stayed in school. Anyway, heat is like when a mare is going through a point where she gets super horny and feels like she could spread her legs to any guy in town with a penis." She gestured in the air with her hooves for effect. Of course, I've never heard of it happening to a colt before. Astonishment covered Big Mac's face, like a child learning where babies came from. "It definitely happens to males as well. It's not just females." Really? I never knew that." Coming back from the issue at hand, Big Mac spoke again. Well, the super horny part pretty much has got it right. Spreading the legs for any guy in town part, not so much." He grinned sheepishly back at her. "So, how do you get rid of this heat thing?" "Well, here. I can fix it for you easily." Cheerilee began moving towards and up Big Mac's bodies, pulling their bodies much, much closer than he would have liked. Except he did! "What in the hay are you—" "Shh." Cheerilee shushed him. "Just sit back and relax." She slowly dragged herself down his body and out of his sight. Oh, no. This isn't good. She was going to have sex with him. Now, as much as he wanted this, especially with the way her body was grinding on him, he couldn't let her down. He had to tell her. Wait. Cheerilee kept moving downwards, not listening to a word he said. "Cherry!" She immediately stopped her descent and glared up at Big Mac, annoyance filling her green eyes. He knew that she absolutely loathed being called that ever since high school when the harmless pet name was conceived. Some things never changed. "What?" She snapped up at him, frustrated and fed up by his weak protests. Just stop for a minute, okay? I need to..." Big Mac nervously gulped, ashamed of himself. "Tell you something." She sighed, exasperated, before pulling herself back up to his eye level. "Fine. What's so important?" Man, she was really raring to go down on him, wasn't she? "Well, he needed to get this off his chest." "Yeah?" Cheerilee impatiently tapped on his shoulder. You see..." Big Mac took a huge breath of air, ready to either go big or go home. That's always been one of my favorite sayings, go big or go home. I like that one. Before finally reaching his conclusion. "I'm a virgin." He mumbled out as quick as he could, hoping he wouldn't have to right out say it. Unfortunately, he was wrong. What?" She blankly stared at him. "Slow down." Big Mac took another deep breath and steadied himself, knowing he would soon regret this. I'm a virgin," he mumbled under his breath, slower this time than before. "You can laugh now." He looked back up into her eyes, expecting to see pity or rejection. However, that wasn't the case. Instead, her eyes were just filled with the same warmth and kindness they've always had. She shook her head and chuckled lightly. "So? Who cares? No wonder you've been so horny. You just need a good mare to teach you the ropes." Narrowing her eyes on teach. She leaned in close to his ear. "Or a bad mare," she huskily whispered, somehow still retaining a voice like silk. Well, hot damn, that worked out better than expected. In fact, the entire day kind of turned out better than expected. Big Mac went out of town for a moment, tired and horny, and now he had a pretty girl up on top of him. pressing down on his erection and teaching him about sex. Now that is what most ponies would call a good day. Big Mac shifted anxiously below Cheerilee. So, where do we start then? Do we just, do it? He was still perplexed on how this whole sex thing went on. Cheerilee smiled at him for a moment before bursting into laughter again. You're so adorable, you know that? Big Mac's blush burned through his red coat. So, is that a yeah? Cheerilee stopped laughing for a moment, catching her breath. Well, no, but I think we need to start off slow. First off, I need to know, have you ever made out with any pony? He thought about it for a moment. Well, I guess no. I can't say I have. Big Mac's blush burned even brighter than before. Oh boy, Cheerilee let out a long drawn-out whistle. You are some piece of work. A stud like you, never kissing any pony? I swear, Mac, after this, I'm not going to let you go back to that farm. She leaned down and planted a kiss right on top of his snout. Anyway, just do as I do, okay? It'll feel natural. And with that, she lowered her lips to lavish his. The kiss was slow, sweet, and simple, each of them content with the pace they were moving at. It was cute, really, almost like a timid kiss between two friends. Big Mac felt he couldn't stay there forever, just kissing like that with his eyes closed, but his more instinctive side didn't. The kiss began to escalate into something not so friendly, something more primal. Their lips writhed together, a hungry lust consuming both of them. Cheerilee moaned, and to Big Mac's surprise, Force opened his mouth before quickly snaking her tongue in. That's one of the best feelings right there, is when the girl puts her tongue right into your mouth, you know what I'm saying? Like, getting penetrated with the tongue, you know what I'm saying? That's some good stuff. The first thing that Big Mac noticed was how good she tasted. Not even the best apple cider that they made back on the farm could compete with the sweet, sweet aroma that swarmed him as soon as she opened her mouth. It was almost like fresh mulberries picked right off the bush, stupendously sweet with just a tiny hint of tart. Cheerilee's tongue greeted his in the middle, awkwardly dancing together as soon as they collided. She led with her majestic movements, with Big Mac's tongue clumsily trying to keep up with what she was doing. After a while, however, she realized that she was right about this. It did feel natural, and right now, he was feeling starved. Big Mac aggressively pushed their twirling tongues back into her mouth. The taste even stronger than before, he roughly ground his hips up into hers as the sensations increasingly came back to him. Cheerilee was no longer leading the kiss here with finesse, Big Mac easily overpowering her tongue as she fought against his. Now there was only primal lust and urges, tensions gathering between the kiss every second it lasted. Gasping, Cheerilee broke away from him and resurfaced for air, greedily gulping up her much-needed oxygen. She looked shaken. Wow, she panted in between breaths. Wow. Are you sure you've never done this before? She laughed weakly. Big Mac grinned wildly at her, pumped full of pride. Huh, guess I'm just a natural then, huh? He chuckled quietly with her, secretly wishing that she hadn't broken away at the last moment. So, what now? Just give me a moment. Cheerilee composed herself a little, still rocked by the kiss. Well, actually, can we, kiss again? She blushed hotly, her usual confidence and composure leaving her for a while. And Big Mac thought he should be the one asking her for things more. Not that he was complaining. I don't see why not. He beamed wolfishly at her. Come here, you. I don't know, one of the things I think is kind of odd is in these kind of stories, like when the virgin or whatever starts to act really, like, dominant. I mean, I guess, a simple come here you isn't really dominant, but it shows traits of, like, dominance, and, he's a virgin, he's never done it before. What kind of virgin knows exactly how to woo a woman over? Maybe he's just being sarcastic. I don't know. With his arms open wide, he watched as Cheerilee's eyes lit up. With a nervous giggle, she flopped girlishly into his arms and pressed her lips hard against his own. This time, they both almost immediately opened their mouths, their tongues swirling together once again. Big Mac tried to control himself but not overpower her too much, but After a few seconds, he knew that he couldn't do that. Pulling her body incredibly close to his, he played with her tongue for a bit, seeing just how much he could get her to react to what he did. He experimented with her, seeing what she did and didn't like. At one moment, he found the spot right underneath her tongue that had literally made her whinny with guilty satisfaction. That line gave me chills. Big Mac could feel Cheerilee getting increasingly wetter on top of him, some of it dripping onto his stomach and groin. Her moans and groans were steadily increasing in volume, and Big Mac could feel her heart hammering hellishly in her chest, but it would be a lie if he said that he didn't find it insanely attractive. In their mouths, the dance that was once the kiss was more resembled a battle, one fighting for dominance over the other. Of course, Big Mac could have easily just pushed around her tongue, but he enjoyed having hers, hungrily trying to overpower his. Pushing and twisting in every direction, they broke away at the same time. They both knew what they wanted, and they were both going to do it. Cheerilee was still sweating rather profusely from the pleasure of the kiss.